But, you know, we've said this over and over, but in just a few days, the children, will return. And for our year-round schools, they are actually returning this morning, as a matter of fact. And there is something magical. I say this because it never leaves my mind about that first day. You're in elementary, middle school, high school, there's something magical. But I think about all of those brand new gym shoes and new socks. And, you know, I like to just get as country as I possibly can. And those hair pretties that the little girls have in their hairs, and brand new skirts and sweaters, and the lunch boxes, and sharp crayons and pencils, and all of those things. And the first bell rings, and they line up, and they face the building, and parents stand anxiously on the sides of our playground, and they look to us with belief that we can make the difference for the children of the city. What an awesome responsibility. Sometimes it just takes me back. I'd like to welcome you, and I don't want to delay the day because this is actually the second time that we've had Dr. Howard in our district. And I'm extremely excited. I go to his website, and I go to other websites that happen to have his articles. And, you know, we have been studying about effort-based education. So we wanted you to get him to get a first chance experience in being able to hear from one of the individuals. Now, this concept actually has gone back probably 50 years or more, 100 years, there, because some of the earliest thinking, I think we got off course, but some of the earliest thinking did promote this thought that kids can get smarter, and as parents, we know that. But I wanted you to have the opportunity to hear from him directly. 10 years ago, I think he said he was here in our district, and he shared with us about how kids get smarter and our role in that, and how we empower them to help themselves get smarter. It's controversial. And in some respects, it's mind-boggling, and we do have to readjust and rethink. But you know, I think about this. I bought a video game for my son. On Christmas Day, he opened the package, and I could hear him struggle. And he'd get to a point in his video game, and he would readjust his approach. He would practice it again. He would give himself feedback on what worked and what didn't work. And by the end of the next day, he was becoming somewhat of an expert. From that, I can glean some things that I know. We do get better at the things that we really work hard and we use effective effort around. He was effectively adjusting his effort. He was effectively identifying the benchmarks, and he was effectively giving himself feedback, and to the point that he became an expert. Now, am I proud that that's what he's an expert in when he's a C in reading? Not at all. But we do know that effective effort does bring around improved results. I'd like to share with you, to the best of my ability with my not-so-good glasses, some history on Dr. Howard before he comes, and then I will quickly move out of the way. Forgive me for reading this. Dr. Howard holds an A.B. from Harvard College and a Ph.D. in social psychology from Howard University. He has been published in the New Republic of, I think it's Daedalus, Education Week, and the National Urban League's The State of Black America, as well as the Boston Globe. He is a lecturer at the Harvard University's Principal Center at the Graduate School of Education. In 2008, he was appointed by the governor of Massachusetts State Board to the state board at the elementary and secondary levels. Dr. Howard is the founder and president of the Efficacy Institute. He is also CEO of JPH Learning. He has more than 25 years of experience as a staff developer and a consultant to school and community leaders on systemic educational reform, and a consultant to corporate executives and senior managers of Fortune 500. Over the past two decades, the Efficacy Institute's mission has been to promote academic and social development of children by helping educators, parents, and human service providers operate from a simple belief, and that's our belief, that all children can learn at very high levels if the process of education is effectively organized. The Efficacy Institute has trained over 40,000 educators in more than 50 school districts throughout the United States. I would like to welcome, on behalf of all of you, Dr. Jeff Howard.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Can you hear me in the back of the room at a normal voice? Good. The blurb that she just read said over 25 years. It's actually quite a number of years over 25 years. Well, I'm at a point where I just leave it at over 25 years. Does anybody, raise your hand if you were here when I was here before? Raise and wave. Okay, so a number of people. Does anybody remember the year? You got any sort of markers in your head that would tell you what year that was? 98? Oh, I thought it was 10 years, but am I biasing you when I said 9 or 10? It's been 9 or 10 years. Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad to be back. You know, I remembered in the cab on the way in here what a nice town this is. This is a very pretty city. I know you're all proud of it. And I want to let you know before I start, I hope I said this the last time, but I regard educators as the salt of the earth. I think we are the most important people in the country for the future of the country. And the reason I've stayed in this game for so long is that I feel privileged to actually work with educators and feel that because of my own connection with you and with education, I'm doing the most important work that I could be doing. So I think in that sense, we are all a family who've taken on the biggest challenge. So I'm very glad to be here. Now I've got a presentation to do. You'll see that some of the elements, those of you who were here before, will see that some of the elements are the same. You'll see that some have changed. How do I want to sort of generally start this? I was struck by Carolyn Evans' the discussion of her son. How old is he? Where are you?
Oh, he's gone now. He's 24.
He's 24. But so when did this episode happen? How old was he then?
He was probably
9 or 10 when he got this video game. Okay. I'd like to keep that contrast in mind between how he attacked that video game and what the results were, and how at the time at least he attacked his reading and what the results were. And I want you to sort of just keep in mind the difference between the two. I want you to be very clear about something though. Video games are extremely complex cognitive challenges. Raise your hand if you have a friend who's a gamer. So those of you who have a friend who's a gamer know exactly what I'm talking about. These games are no joke. They are not for dummies. It is one of the more complex things. And those of you who have a kid in your family who don't play video games, I would challenge you tonight to get hold of a video game, get a kid to explain the game to you, and try to play it. It'll give you an appreciation for what very young children are able to master when they make a real commitment to do so. That's enough by way of introduction. Maybe I should tell you a little bit about how I got into this. I went to the test school in Chicago, Tilden Technical High School. You had to take the test to get in. There were a small number of highly coveted places in the freshman class at Tilden Tech. It was the best school in the South Side, high school by far. And I got in, and it was a very big deal. If you got into Tilden, your mother called up all the relatives the day she found out and said, Jeffrey got into Tilden, because that's how much it meant. Everybody, obviously, who got in passed the test. We were among the select few. We were the elect of the South Side to get into Tilden. And you could tell that on the first day of school because everybody had, we were nervous, freshmen, high school. But at the same time, everybody had that certain cut in their strut, that, glide in our stride that came from being people that had passed the test. By the middle of the first semester, that had changed dramatically for probably the majority of the freshman class. Some of us still had that cut in our strut. A lot of kids did not. Because, it turned out, we were assigned to divisions, homerooms. And there was like 6 or 7 homerooms in the freshman class. Okay? You went to the homeroom, obviously, at the beginning of the morning, and the homeroom teacher took attendance and made announcements, and then you went off to your first class. We thought that was strictly random. Turned out it wasn't. Anybody want to guess? What was the basis of the assignment to homerooms? There was an IQ subsection of the admissions test. And based on your IQ score, you were assigned from homeroom number 1 to homeroom number 7. And over the course of the first semester, the boys found out, this is an all-boys school, the boys found out which homeroom they were in and what it meant. And you began to see the effects of it. Now, those of us who were in the upper groups, the upper homerooms, generally didn't have academic classes with the boys in the lower homerooms. But you did have some classes, like music. Okay, we shared classes. And there was an academic component to music, and you could clearly see the difference. The guys in the upper homerooms were fluent and sort of aggressive and, answering questions and responding to the teacher. And the boys from the lower divisions were halting, much more hesitant, more inclined to respond to a teacher's question with, huh? I don't know. Right? It was crystal clear. Now, I have to tell you, I'm a social psychologist by training. I was a social psychologist even then and just didn't know it. I was a kid who had one foot in the interaction. I wanted to be one of the boys, but I always had one foot out over here, and I was looking back, trying to understand what was going on. Right? And it struck me that something funny was happening because those boys from the lower divisions who were halting and hesitant were not on the playground. They could talk a superior brand of trash. I mean, they were fluent, right? Sharp, quick, witty, could learn the playbook of the football team, right? Very complex. But in class, they were like different guys. Something's wrong with this picture, and I don't quite know what it is. Now, so I want you to contrast that with another story. I went from Tilden Tech to Harvard College. Okay. March on Washington was in 1963, and schools like Harvard in 1964 responded to that coming out party in 1963 by suddenly changing their admissions practices. There had been 5 to 10 African American students per class of 1,200, 5 to 10 a year between World War II and 1963. Okay, always 5 to 10, no more than 10. In 1964, well, after the march, there was a meeting of the admissions officers of the Ivy League colleges, and across the entire Ivy League, and in addition, other schools across the country, like I suspect University of Michigan, there was a sudden change. And we went from 10 to 30 in the class that entered in 64. My class entered in 65. We went from 30 to 40. The next class went to 50. Stayed at 50 for a while, eventually went to 100, 110. To more or less represent a good representation in the class, but there was this uptick. So in 1965, I go from the south side of Chicago to Cambridge, and I'm sitting in Memorial Hall, which is the biggest hall at Harvard College. This is the end of freshman week, okay? So we have our freshman orientation, and everybody, of course, you think you're nervous first day of high school. Everybody's really nervous that first week at Harvard College. You know, do I belong here? Everybody feels the same way. Everybody's kind of nervous. There were probably a few kids who probably felt that they belonged here, but most people still had that sense of challenge about it. And on the last day of orientation week, the president of the university called us into Memorial Hall and made a speech. And he was, as you can imagine, very correct and patrician in his bearing. His name was Nathan Pusey. And President Pusey made a good speech. And all of us were, really paying attention. We wanted to hear what the president had to say. And then he stunned us at the end of the speech by making what turns out it was a fairly traditional statement. He said, "And in conclusion, gentlemen, I would invite you to look to your left and look to your right." You know that speech? What's the next line of the speech? Yeah. 2 of you won't be here on graduation day. And our job freshman year is to find out which one of you is the serious one. Okay, which one of you belongs here? Pusey said, "Gentlemen, I would invite you to look to your left and look to your right." He said, "We expect all 3 of you to graduate on time and with honors." Because he said, "Because, gentlemen, Harvard does not make admissions errors." Do you have any questions? I said, "No, it's cool. No questions." And everybody walked out like 6 inches off the ground. It was like this weight had been lifted. I mean, it was truly, and what I just said to you, I can guarantee you, if we had a tape, and I don't, but if we had a tape, those are his exact words. It was imprinted in my consciousness. Now, as we go forward, I want you to think about the contrast between the treatment of those who passed the test to get into Tilden Tech versus those who passed the test to get into Harvard. And I want you to understand that in most of American culture, the treatment is more like Tilden Tech. It is only what you get at Harvard. It's only at the rarefied sort of pinnacle. Okay. Any observations about that? Do you recognize anything about either one of those circumstances I just talked about? Questions about it, observations? Did I mention this is going to be an interactive presentation? Thoughts about it? Talk to each other at your tables just for a moment about those 2 circumstances and what implications there may be from them. Take another minute. Take another minute. So observations, thoughts, insights? You were talking about something, yes.
I think, I guess the conclusion is that you rises to the expectations of others.
Yeah, that the expectations presented by these two institutions were very different, and that you might suspect people would rise to the expectations. Other observations? Does that sort of capture what everybody else thought? I don't believe you.
We also said at our table that in your last example, the professor pretty much dispelled some of the doubts that those students had as they were questioning who you belonged to.
Yeah.
Are we supposed to do that?
Yeah, he seemed to implicitly understand what our fundamental question was, and he answered it for us. That's a good observation. You see a hand over there? Yes.
Similar, we just talked about how the initial expectations can make or break a student.
He said that the initial expectations can make or break the student. Put a box around that. And the expectations don't even have to be conscious. Yes. When you're made to feel inferior, you are far more likely to perform that way. And when you're made to feel superior. Okay? Yes.
My dad was a child psychologist in the 70s and 80s at Grand Rapids, and he would routinely bring us downstairs.
Can you hear in the back? Could you stand up and project?
My dad was a child psychologist for Grand Rapids in the 70s and 80s, and he would bring my brothers and sisters down to test us when we ever had a new IQ test to use as kids. And he told all of us that we were gifted, and we knew what the score was to be average was 100, and we knew that 100 is 30. So he told us recently, within the last 10 years, that was not always the case. So I think, but we felt that we were good at school, that we were smart, and we believed it. We also still want to know who wasn't. I suspect it was my sister.
The one that you always had arguments with, right? Did you heard in the back the story? His dad was a psychologist, and administered IQ tests as part of his job. So he bought how many kids?
I have 2 brothers and a little sister.
4 of them. He would bring them in on a regular basis. Every time there was a new version of the IQ test, he'd bring them in and give them to the kids. And when they finished, he would look at the scores and he would look at the kids and say, "You test gifted." And then after they all grew up, he said that wasn't always precisely the case. But they still don't know which ones. He had the good sense not to tell them which ones did not show up. It's a good story. Okay, I'm going to press on. This is the vision mission of the Efficacy Institute, and you have these materials in front of you. I'm going to ask you to stay with me. Don't read ahead, because I got some little surprises in there. Oh, I need some volunteers, 5 or 6 people to come up here and pass these things out. I've got clickers. I want you to pass these around like to every other person. I have enough for every other person in the room. I have 49 of them. And these things are worth about $15 a piece. So when you finish with them, don't put them in your pocket, because they're small enough that you can walk out without realizing that you're doing it. We'll talk about how to use them in a while. One for every other person. We're going to be doing a little sampling of the audience here today. Okay, raise your hand if you've got a clicker. Okay, good. Put your hands down. Now raise your hand if you fully intend to make sure I get it back when you finish. Thank you. Don't forget. Okay. I'm going to quickly run through the vision and mission of the Efficacy Institute. We are a not-for-profit agency of education reform that is dedicated to reproducing the effect that Nathan Pusey had on the freshman class of Harvard across the country. Because we are convinced that what Pusey did to us at Harvard, the principal of Tilden Tech, whose name I cannot remember, that's how much of a factor he was in our lives, that the principal of Tilden Tech could have made that same speech, and he could have made it with similar, if not identical, effect, because almost everybody graduated on time, and a large majority graduated with honors against a very, very rigorous standard at Harvard College. So we want to duplicate that effect and the understanding that produced in Pusey the drive to make that speech, and then set up an institution that actually supported that belief system. That's what the Efficacy Institute is about. Here's our vision and mission. Our vision is a nation dedicated to producing successive generations of citizens prepared to constructively participate in the society of their time. Read that sentence carefully and look for the key words. What are the key words? Well, yeah, real dedication to getting this done. Successive generations, not just doing it once, but each one can do the next one, can do the next one, can do the next one. Constructively participate. Okay, those guys at Enron, the movie was called The Smartest Guys in the Room, but some of the stuff they were doing was not really constructive, was it? Any others? Their time. Society of their time. And that really, I think, is the keyest of the key words in this sentence, because the times, they are a-changing. I mean, when Bob Dylan wrote that, the times were changing pretty quick. Well, now they're moving at light speed. We are transforming this world to a degree that is just breathtaking, and every generation comes into an entirely different world. And we have to prepare them to function in that world, which is going to be so different, we can't even anticipate what it's going to be. But we know it's going to be seriously challenged in all kinds of ways. Environmentally, the political configurations in the world that are changing so dramatically even as we speak. The politics in the country is changing. Everything, the global economy and the profound implications of that, where our children are going to be actually directly competing with people across the planet in a way that most of us in this room never had to do. So this vision is a very tall order. To accomplish that vision, we need something closer to the ground that educators can grab hold of. We need a mission. And here's what we've said to ourselves about what our mission is. Our mission is development. We work to release the inherent intellectual capacity of all children and to affirm their right to learn. We commit ourselves to break the cycle of underdevelopment that afflicts far too many children in American culture, especially children of color and the economically disadvantaged, but as you will see, the problems are not restricted to children of color and the economically disadvantaged. We have general problems with the education of our children in American culture. We will eradicate the myth that many of these children are incapable of learning at high levels by demonstrating the truth of their capacities to rapidly build knowledge and skills. A great man once said, "It don't mean a thing. Shoo-bop, 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 shoo-bop." And the swing in this case is dramatic improvement in student outcomes. It is not enough to say all children can learn. We've got to demonstrate that we get from the full range of children in American culture 21st century learning. We have to show that it's true. demonstrate the truth of their capacities to rapidly build knowledge and skills. Just like, by the way, software engineers do when they create those games. Software engineers demonstrate the truth of the capacities of our children to rapidly build knowledge and skills. We're proposing that schools have to do the same thing. In this work, we again is the Efficacy Institute, but I'm offering this to you for your consideration as well. In this work, we appeal to the most positive and powerful human instinct, like a voice that comes from on high that rattles our bones. Develop the children. Okay, I think that's something we all healthy adults feel that imperative to develop the children and get them prepared for their time. We, all adults, are responsible for managing their development, and we can learn how to do it. Now, there's a zinger in that last sentence. Anybody articulate the zinger? You know what I mean by a zinger? It's like taking my knuckle and digging it into your side a little bit. Say it out loud. I'm sorry? Yeah, what's the zinger involved with that? That we ain't doing it now. You know, I don't mean to be impolite, but I say that to everybody I talk to, and I mean it. We have to learn how to do this, or perhaps more correctly, we have to relearn how to do it. Because I think there was a time in America where those children that we chose to educate back in those days, and we didn't choose to educate everybody, but those children we chose to educate, we got them to a 20th century or a 19th century standard where they could function in their time. But we've lost our way, and we're going to have to learn how to do it again. Our ultimate objective, now this is speaking for the Efficacy Institute, our ultimate objective is nothing short of freedom. It is developed people who are free to find meaning in life, to build quality lives for themselves, and then leave behind a legacy of wisdom and humanity. Undeveloped people are not free. And to the extent that we're turning out from our schools people who are undeveloped, unprepared to function in the 21st century, we are turning out people, and we should see this in their faces as they walk the halls. We are turning out people who will never be free. The only ones who will be free are the ones that are functioning at high academic levels. So educators, and this is one of the reasons I think we are the most important people in the country, educators are freedom fighters. Nothing less. Reactions to this? Feelings about it? I heard someone. No? I usually get reactions to this. I'm surprised.
I think it's a very powerful mission and vision statement. It's very well.
She says she thinks it's a powerful vision and mission statement. Can you? Yes.
You say we've lost that capacity. Are you referring to education in general or particular parts of the education?
I'm going to give you some.
I believe there are some educators who do not believe that's the case based on the results.
And I believe that's true too. The problem is they're a small minority. I think in general, we have lost it. There are individual people who are beacons who absolutely show what's possible. They've lost nothing. But it's very interesting to me that they often sit in the midst of people who have lost it, and they're doing it, and we're not. And there doesn't even appear to be much curiosity about that going back and forth. People feel okay about not. You know, she's doing it, we're not, and we feel okay about that. As the kids would say, what's up with that? Good. Other observations? Yes.
I think the most interesting thing in this is that your ultimate objective is freedom. We talk about living in a free country and everything we are in the United States is about freedom. But really, I think this is just a fabulous sentence because without knowledge, we really are shackled.
Yes. I think that's very well said. And as you said that, I'm thinking about China. We're watching China on TV every night. I was in China less than a year ago. Spent 2 weeks there. They have an authoritarian government. It's crystal clear. But when you meet the people and talk to the people and see them walking in the streets of Shanghai, okay, they got a cut in their strut. Let me tell you, they're feeling pretty darn good about themselves. There is a kind of freedom that they are extending out into that 1.4 billion population with education. Even in an authoritarian political structure, they feel free. Okay? Yes?
I was struck by some of the very active, dynamic verbs in that mission statement. Release, inherent, to break the cycle, to eradicate the myth, and appealing. Those are very strong words.
She's saying she's struck by the verbs erase, eradicate, appeal. These are strong words. Yeah, because we think, nobody's ever mentioned that before, and I'm not sure I ever noticed it. Okay, we wrote this. I mean, we took weeks to sort of pull this together, and until we were satisfied it really did represent us. And I never had that thought before, but I know why it's there, because it's a very high hill we have to climb. We know by the time we wrote this, we knew this was a very tough struggle. So the action verbs needed to be strong action verbs. We have to eradicate this mess, which gives you a hint about what might be coming. Okay, moving forward. Thank you for that. Here's our definition of efficacy. The dictionary definition is effective and efficient. That wasn't, that's all right, but we thought we could, since we named ourselves Efficacy, we said we can come up with something better. And this is our definition. Efficacy is the capacity to mobilize the effort of adults and children toward development. There'll be more on that as we go forward. But mobilize the effort of adults and children toward development. What is development? Development is the process of getting better, stronger, and smarter at anything that you do. In school, it's the achievement of proficiency at targeted learning outcomes at each grade level. But it's getting better, stronger, and smarter. A progressive process. Now don't look down, look up, stay with me. This is why I want you to actually stay one behind me so that I can kind of surprise you with some things. But the children who come across the transom into your buildings every day, whose kids are they? Okay. So there's a consensus in the room that they're ours? Okay. That's good. It's also politically correct. I wouldn't have expected you to say anything else. If I were to I want you to picture the faculties. Your principals and APs, primarily? Raise your hand if you're something else. Tell me who you are. So who else do we have? We have principals, APs, and who else? That's okay. If I were to picture your faculties, picture a faculty meeting. Everybody's there. Get their faces. Now, I'm taking that group out to the best, most interesting watering hole in town on Friday night. And after the third drink, I ask them this question. What do they tell me? Whose children are these? Not mine. Theirs. Some of them would say ours, wouldn't they? But a lot of them would say theirs. There's basically three answers to this question. Mine. Whose children are these? They're mine. Ours. And theirs. Which one is the best answer? You think mine is? Or there's always an argument between mine and ours, a legitimate argument. The mind people, if I can save some time, think that, well, because if they're mine, I mean, that's a real personal thing. Okay, I'm not counting on anything you do. The ours people counter, yeah, but if we can do that as a team, aren't we more effective in the collective? They're our children. Nobody picks theirs, except that after the third drink, you know what? A lot of people in their hearts actually feel that these kids that are coming to the Grand Rapids schools now, these are their kids. All right, so mine is the best answer. Why mine or ours? Why is that the best answer? Why is that better than theirs? Ownership. The way you answer the first question absolutely controls how you answer the second. There's the second question. If the answer is, it's their children, not mine, the way these children act, these are certainly not my children. When I say that, I am absolutely not responsible for anything that happens to them. If they're not going to be free, it's not my issue. And I suspect that when you've got lots of people who say theirs, you can walk into their classrooms and you can see that it's very clear that they have no sense of responsibility. I've heard teachers say things to me like, I taught the material. You know the second part of that. They just didn't learn it. I did my job. Those are people who answered the first question wrong. So I just throw that out. You know, I would ask you to think about doing a poll of your teachers. I'm not sure you want to take them out for drinks. That third drink can get pretty expensive. But I would have you see if you can get them to talk from the heart and find out. What do you think? What percentage of the teachers in Grand Rapids would say mine or ours? And what percent would, in their hearts, do you think would say theirs? Any estimates? Talk about that at your table so you can really tell yourselves the truth. Just for 30 seconds. All right, take another couple seconds. Anybody want to hazard a guess? What percent would say theirs? I'm not going to make you do it, but does anybody want to just shout out a guess? What percent would say theirs?
Depending on the level.
All right, let's do high school. What percent would say theirs? 90%? 75% would say theirs? Did I see a hand? Yes?
We look at it a little differently. We said, how many of them would say they're mine in my classroom, but they're yours in your classroom?
Well, that's all right.
I mean,
So how many would say they're mine in my classroom?
a lot. I don't know. 50%?
50%? Okay, good.
I would say 50% would say that they're ours until the test scores are scored, until they see the results. After testing, then they'll change their opinion.
Okay, so when they see the test score, they say 50% would say ours until they see the test scores. But after they see the test scores, then that's like the mother and the father discussing whose child it is. It depends on the kid's behavior, right? Let me tell you what your son did today. Any other observations? Good. Okay, so I didn't hear anybody say anything less than 50%. So at least 50%, I'm hearing, of the teachers have the idea that these children are their children. Let me give you a hint about where we're going with this. This becomes a leadership issue, people. Because I'm going to tell you right now in Iraq, if the lieutenant has the attitude, whose soldiers are these? I don't know, government issue. They, somebody, but I'll just do my job. Captain doesn't allow that. And if the captain allows it, the colonel gets rid of the captain and puts somebody else in place that can build morale in the team. Every lieutenant who's going to stay on the job says, these are my people. When they say my people, it is fundamentally personal. These are my people. Colonel doesn't allow anything different. One of the things that people who take the responsibility for their children do is they get clear about the mission. And I would argue that a lot of us are generally directionally clear and in agreement, but in too many cases we haven't worked out, in fact, a specific target that we all agree on. So I want to offer you one right now. If I had asked you, and sometimes I open up by asking people, what's the mission of public education in Grand Rapids, Michigan? You would have said, trust me, because I've heard it over and over again, you would have said, citizens who can function in society, lifelong learners, people who feel good about themselves. But you'd have said things like that, and everything you would have said would have been true, poetic even. Okay? But it wouldn't have been very specific, and it wouldn't have specified what it is that the educator is to do tomorrow. So what I've done is I've taken those wonderful statements and reduced it down to something that is consistent with that, but gives you marching orders. The mission is proficiency for all students in each subject area and the development of strong character. This is the mission I'm offering you for public education in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I know probably a lot of people spent some time on that mission statement, okay, for the district. I strongly suspect that it doesn't say anything as specific as this, and therefore, if it's flowery, children achieving the level of their potential, if it says that kind of stuff, it's just an exercise and it doesn't actually structure your behavior. This would structure your behavior, so I offer it to you for your consideration. Define proficiency at each grade level and what constitutes strong character, and then accelerate all students to those targets. That's the work. That's the mission, and that's the work. Now, I do need you to talk to me about this because, who does he think he is? Coming in here and telling us but yet that is what I am standing here in front of you doing. So react to that. How do you feel about that mission? I see some people nodding their heads. Got some discussion. Let's talk to each other. So just talk about your feelings about this or your observations about it. Okay, come back. So what about it? I have raised a flag here. So here's the question. Come back to me. Here's the question. I've raised a flag. I'm asking you to salute this flag. But I can't make you. And I want you to talk to me about how you feel about it. Is this a flag you could salute? If not, why not? How do you feel about this?
Yes, it
Yeah.
My food service worker doesn't feel they're a part of it. With a statement like this, my secretary can say, my job is helping to make sure that every child walks out of this building knowing what they need to do in math, reading, writing, science, and social studies. It's a way that every person can tie in with meaning and specificity.
I hope you got that on tape, because that's going to be in my newsletter next month. That's an excellent statement of what this is intended to do, sir. Thank you. Seriously, I want to write your name down so I can, so people don't think that right? Other observations? Feelings about this. Because what this gentleman just talked about is operationally what the effect of it is. But that's different than how people feel about it. I mean, this is a heavy load I'm laying in your lap. Yes?
The challenge is that we just got done saying that no more than 50% of our...
I'll repeat.
No more than 50% of our staff believe that that's possible. How do we do that?
You just actually made a jump. He said the challenge is if we just admitted that no more than 50% of our staff believe that it's possible, how do we do that? What you actually admitted was that only 50% of your staff, no more than 50%, feel that they are kids. You're actually giving an explanation for why they may feel that way. You're saying they may feel that way because they don't believe it's possible to do much with these kids. I suspect you're right. So one of the problems with this mission is if you don't believe that these kids can achieve at that level, then that's a heck of a burden to put on you. Yes.
My thinking is, it's one thing to say I believe in that mission, but then to take it into action
Is something else.
is something else.
She said it's one thing to say that I believe in it, but to actually move it into action, boy, that's something else. And I may want to believe it, but not know what to do about it. That's good. Any other observations? Okay. That's a little blurred. I wonder if I have any controls here. I'll see if I can take care of that on a break. Okay, so we want children to be in positions to lead quality lives. I think, don't we? Lives filled with meaning as well as accomplishment. Now, to get them there, I think we all have to understand that the development of both intellect, which can be talked about in terms of academic proficiency, and strength of character are prime means to that end. They have to have strong character, and they got to be able to think up a storm. And then they have a real shot at quality lives. No guarantees, but they got a shot. Without those two things, they don't. So that's what we're talking about here. Here is a definition of academic proficiency. It is solid academic performance for each subject assessed. Students reaching this level have demonstrated competency over challenging subject matter, including knowledge and application skills. Okay? The real magic of this definition is that it's not just what you know, it's whether you can apply it in real life situations. So knowledge includes subject matter knowledge, facts, concepts, procedures, orders of operation. The stuff you have to memorize is the knowledge stuff. And it's the stuff that you can demonstrate on the bubble tests that a lot of us grew up taking. Right? Is it A, B, C, or D? Now, the new tests also demand application skills. That's what the open-ended questions are. The ability to apply that knowledge to real-world or novel situations is a fundamental element of proficiency as we now define it. They've got to be able to solve problems with it. They've got to be able to use the knowledge in a reasoning capacity, analytical skills appropriate to the subject matter, demonstration of the capacity to synthesize and evaluate. The higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, okay? To be able to synthesize I'm a social psychologist. That is a synthesis of sociology and psychology, because you can only answer certain questions by understanding both of those elements. Kids can do a synthesis of mathematics and civics to discuss why cities are placed where they are or something. Okay? But at the higher levels, people can spontaneously bring ideas together. They can analyze, they can evaluate, tell you why Grand Rapids is the size that it is versus why Detroit is the size that it is. Evaluate the placement of these two cities in terms of why cities become very large. Now, the combination of having the knowledge and having the application skills is proficiency, and that is a very high standard to ask kids to achieve. This is a standard that I strongly suspect you'd be satisfied if your personal biological children achieved this standard. Because if they achieve this standard, K to 12, in every subject area, your kid is going to be okay in the 21st century. This is a definition that we adapted from the NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress. This is the test the feds give every few years, right? This was their definition, and we tweaked it a little bit, but I was really excited by that definition. I've been waiting a long time for something this clear as a standard. That's what we're talking about with our mission, proficiency. Questions about the standard? Okay? If that's the standard, I had a superintendent listen to this presentation or an earlier version, and he said to me, Jeff, I love that. That's really good. He said, I want to take that out to the community and give it to the folks, okay, in the churches and in the after-school programs. I want to be able to talk about this. And he said, that language is too academic. So he said, Jeff, give it to me in simpler terms. And I argued with him. I said, hey, Joe, guy's name was Joe Burke. You know, people can understand that definition. They don't have to have a degree to get it. You can explain it to him. He said, Jeff, would you just give it to me in simpler terms? So I took it back to the staff and explained that Joe Burke was demanding that we put it in simpler terms, and I thought that was slightly condescending. And they said, Jeff, can we just give it to him in simpler terms? So I said, you give it to him in simpler terms. And they went off for half an hour, and this is what they came back with. And I said, okay, all right, that's all right. I like that very much. I offer that to you. You can give that to your kids. You can give that to your parents. It doesn't lose any of the meaning. This loses none of the meaning of that. Okay? That's the complex version. This is the same thing, simpler, and it'll communicate more broadly. So I offer that to you for your consideration. All right, now if that's the standard, knowledge plus application skills, the NAEP is an assessment of that that's done nationally, the National Assessment of Educational Progress. These are the 2007 results of the NAEP. The NAEP is done with a random sample of children, public and private, in every state of the union. A big random sample. This is considered the national report card. This is the best information we have about how our kids are doing in the United States relative to reading and mathematics. These are the reading scores, the latest reading scores, 07, for grade 4, 8, and 12, disaggregated by racial population. So, black fourth graders are proficient at a rate of 14% nationally, proficient or higher. 86% of black fourth graders are below proficiency in reading. That number drops to 13% at grade 8. It rises back up to 16% at high school. In high school, only 84% of African American students are less than proficient at reading. The numbers in green are the numbers for the previous administration of the test, which in this case was 05. For grade 4 and 8, it was 05. So that's in 2 years, we went from 13 to 14 and from 12 to 13. But in grade 12, The most recent administration of the test was 2002. They haven't done it since 2002. So these are, the 16% is 2002. 17% was 1998. So between 1998 and 2002, we went from 17 down to 16 at the high school level. That's how to read this. White students, 43% are proficient in grade 4. 57% of the most privileged population in the country is below proficiency in reading at grade 4. 40% at grade 8. 42% at grade 12. Hispanics, understand you have, what, a 10% Hispanic population or so in this community? 17% at grade 4, 15% at grade 8, 22% at grade 12. Asian students, the model minority in the country, 46, 41, 34. Nobody breaks 50% in reading proficiency in the United States of America. And this is, understand, an internationally comparable measure. And there are other countries that do very substantially better than this, at least with the kids that they've been able to reach with education. So if you look at the Chinese numbers for where there are actually schools, they'll be, I should get those numbers and do the comparison, but they're hugely better than this. Here are the Michigan results from the NAEP for reading. This is how you compare to the rest of the country. But these are just the Michigan results. Now, there's no 12th grade numbers posted on the website. I don't know why. So we only have 4th and 8th. Black students, 14 and 7, 4th and 8th. Now look at this. Look back at the 14-13 in the country, 14-7. Huge drop-off at the 8th grade level for black students. White students, 48-36. That is roughly comparable. No, 43 and 40. So white students are doing a little better in Michigan. 48-36, 43-40. Well, better at the 4th grade level, less well at the 8th grade level. Hispanic students, 22 and 14. I think Hispanic students are doing a little better than the country. Yes, 17-15 for the country, 22-14. Asian students, 66% of Asian students. We only have grade 4 numbers. Probably the population size was too small to give you a valid grade 8 statistic. Let's do math. Take a deep breath and get ready for math. Here's the national numbers from 2007. You know the drill, so you can read this yourself and make sense of it. Just take a good look. Yeah? Those are the national numbers. Here's the Michigan numbers. For black students, Michigan is substantially worse than the rest of the country. 16 and 11, 12 and 5. White students, I think you're about the same. Hispanic students, 22-15, 28-11, so roughly the same. Asian students, well, that small Asian population is doing real well at the 4th grade level. 93% are proficient or higher. Okay? Now, how about the MEP? Which level do you think corresponds to proficiency with the MEP? Huh? Looks to me like level 1 is the closest. Now, one of the problems we've got in the country is that everybody's been free to determine their own proficiency level. And I think until recently, Michigan was calling level 2 proficiency. Okay? Well, if you look at these numbers and compare these numbers with the numbers in this, on the NAEP, it's pretty clear that that was not a valid measure of proficiency. probably it's like the upper 30% of level 2 and level 1 represent a real measure of proficiency. So it's hard to give a direct assessment, but it seems to me that if you want to talk about accepting the mission that I offer, and you want to test that with the MEP, you're talking about getting kids to level 1. And in Grand Rapids, well, you got a long way to go, Grand Rapids. We laid this out 05, 06, 07. At the grade 3 level for ELA, you went from 5%, big jump to 10%, but you couldn't quite hold it. You dropped back down to 9. Compare that to the state. They started at 13, went to 20, they went to 22. So you're lagging behind, and you're not growing as fast as they are. You should also look at level 4, which is outright failure. 10, 10, 3. We gave you an improvement of +3 because when you drop in failing, you're improving, right? When you go up in proficiency, you're improving. When you drop and the state went 3, 5, 3. So the state, again, is doing quite a bit better than Grand Rapids is. This is grade 5 ELA. Look at the difference between Grand Rapids and the state. 3, 6, 9. You're improving, +3 each year. But the state, 10, 15, 22. They started out at triple your performance, and they're improving dramatically faster than you are, Grand Rapids. Level 4, 11, 11, and 13. So you fell by 2 points. You have more kids who are failing than you did last year. And the state is holding pretty steady. They went 5, 4, 5. Half the number that you have failing. Should I go faster? You've seen all these numbers before. Maybe I shouldn't go faster. Okay, ELA grade 8. Again, you start out so much lower. 4 up to 8 and 06, you hold steady at 8. The state starts out more than twice as high, went from 10 to 19, big jump. Dropped back down to 16. They have a -3, but they're still double your performance at level 1. Level 4, failing. Some progress here. 25 down to 24, down to 15. So a +9 this past year versus only a +2 for the state. Okay? Let's do math. Math grade 3. Now this is really interesting. Grand Rapids. Do I need to go back and check these numbers? I don't think, because this is really out of pattern. Grand Rapids started out at 20% at grade 3 versus only 13% for the state in 05. Went from 20 to 26 and held steady at 26. The state 13 to 20 to 22. So even though the state grew by 2 points, Grand Rapids is still 4 percentage points ahead of the state in grade 3 mathematics. Mathematics people in here, raise your hand. Do we have the mathematics specialists in here? You got some sort of a program going in elementary, in grade 3 math? Everyday math? And it's working for you? Are there different kids doing in the 3rd grade than there are in... It's the same kind of kids? That's interesting, isn't it? You're beating the state. Now, but you leveled off. Don't get cocky. That number needs to keep dramatically rising. But back at level 5, we get back to comfortable territory, grade 5. Look at those numbers. Apparently, you're not using that curriculum in grade 5. Now, but wait, you went from 10% to 13% to 21%. Big jump. 32, 36, 39. So you got a ways to go, but maybe you're doing something right at grade 5. That failing, 19 down to 13, down to 11. So you're making progress at the failing level. Grade 8 mathematics. 11, 12, 18, a +6. But look at the gap between you and the state. 30 down to 29, up to 41. They did a +12 this past year. You ain't going to catch them that way, Grand Rapids. Failing, look at the failing numbers. 38% failed in 05. You dropped that to 20, good. But then you held steady. It's at 21 in 07. The state went from 14 to 7 to 9. What is the Michigan Merit Exam? What is that, and how's it different from the MEP?
It's like the high school meet, but also includes the ACT.
So it includes the ACT.
Yes.
Okay. So I think all I have, okay, I've got both. So ELA, Grand Rapids and the state are about the same at the advanced level. I don't know if this is graded the same way. So is level 2 proficiency? Level 2 is proficiency. So this is more of a national exam. So these may be more, well, I don't know. Those are higher than your NAEP numbers for the state. Anyway, same numbers at level 1, 2%. But at level 2, you dropped from 29 to 27. The state went up from 49 to 50. So they're about doubling your rate now. At the failing level, you went from 27 to 30, failed. The state, 12 and 13. That's ELA for grade 11. And for math, big difference. Only 4% in Grand Rapids versus 10% for the state. Level 2, 22 and 19, you dropped. They went 37 to 36. Failing, you went from 61 to 65% who were failing outright. They went 38 to 38. The numbers generally don't lie. That's my general take on the numbers. What can you tell me about the numbers? To what extent are you and your faculties all aware of these numbers? I see some heads nodding, but I tell you, I only see a few heads nodding, and they're nodding a little tentatively. If I were to walk into your buildings and ask people to show me the numbers, could they pull them out of their desks? Have they ever gone over those numbers together like we did just now? Okay, so what I'm getting is, I'm assuming that the people who are nodding, the answer for you is yes, and those of you who are just looking at me, you're trying to remember whether you actually ever went over those numbers with your people. I will tell you, it has a galvanizing effect to go over the numbers. Yes?
What you've done, though, is you kind of redefined proficiency. You've been looking at the score of 2 as proficiency.
He said, what I've done is I've redefined proficiency, and you've been looking at 2 as proficiency.
So now to make the connection to national.
That making the connection to the national gives more reality to it.
Exactly.
And you've got to think about it differently. Now, I will tell you, the state of Michigan is one of the states that has manipulated the scores more than others in the country. Massachusetts, where I come from, did not manipulate the scores. Our test, the MCAS, is structured pretty much exactly the same as the NAEP is. The NAEP was used as the standard. And by the way, the state of Massachusetts is now the top performing state in ELA and math at every tested level. And that was not the case when we first started. But we came in with a tough test, and we held the line against the people that tried to make us roll it back. And now we are the highest performing state. That doesn't say much. When you compare us to the Chinese, we do not compare to the Chinese. But we sure beat the heck out of you. And I want you to get mad when I say that. Okay. But yes, Michigan has manipulated the cut scores. I think you will find in the next few years, Michigan is going to try to define proficiency as actual proficiency. Because the Ed Week published an article, 6-8 months ago, where the whole truth came out. And Michigan is down there at the bottom of the ones who are calling proficiency something that's much less than proficiency. And I can guarantee you the people in your State Department don't like that much. So they're doing something about it now. Other reactions to this? Okay?
I have a reaction.
Reaction.
Maybe this is a whiny little complaint too, I don't know. But our Michigan Merit Exam is aligned with the state curriculum.
The Michigan merit exam is aligned with the state curriculum, okay?
Or, yeah, and then there's the ACT portion, and then there's a worksheet portion, skills that will apply to the workforce. It's not necessarily aligned to the ACT curriculum.
So this test is aligned to the state curriculum, but not the ACT curriculum. So to that extent, you think that it may be underestimated because the kids haven't been taught what part of the test is assessing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's testing basic skills rather than skills that they need.
All right, now there's a couple things you got to look at. First, is the test, are you teaching what you're testing? If you're going to test this at the 11th grade level, I would think that you don't want to complain when kids come out low that, well, but this test taught something we didn't teach. If you're going to give that test, what's the right way to think about it? I'm sorry, what? We got to start teaching what we've decided to test. Well, you know, if you're going to give the test, align your curriculum. And if you don't like what's in that test because you want to teach something different, test something different. The other thing to look at, though, is even if there's a lack of alignment, presumably there's a lack of alignment across the whole state, right? And you've got almost double the numbers of people failing the test outright than the rest of the state does. So that's the truth. Even if there's a misalignment problem, the comparison shows something about what's happening in this beautiful. I came into this city and I'm looking around and everything is bright and clean and there's construction going on. And I said to the guy who drove me in, you guys aren't having the same sort of economic issues it looks like that the rest of the state of Michigan is having. And he allowed us how that was probably pretty true. That this is a vital sort of. But I can't tell that by looking at what you're doing for your kids. There's a mismatch for me. It's curious. Are there any other observations? Okay. I'm going to do this and then give you a quick break. Strength of character. You can think of building strong character as a kind of proficiency also. People with strong character understand that their behavior matters. This is a definition of strong character. People with strong character understand that their behavior matters. Strong character is grounded in knowledge of the principles of proper conduct and results in young people choosing their actions out of a commitment to their own growth and development on the one hand, and their desire to have a constructive impact on their families and communities on the other. So strong character has a dual focus. One focus is inward. My character determines that I have commitment and determination about my own growth and development. Character is also focused outward. My character determines that I want to be good to you and I want to be a valuable member of our community. In either case, children have to learn knowledge and conduct. Conduct is a stand-in for application skills. We built this definition, and we built it along the lines of the proficiency definition, knowledge plus application skills. But we use conduct as application. Knowledge, children have to learn the principles of proper conduct. They have to learn to tell right from wrong in a wide variety of situations. They have to understand the role of commitment, discipline, and resilience in achieving one's objectives. Those are things that can be taught to children in a classroom context. But application, conduct, they've got to choose their actions in the streets based on the principles when there's no adults around and when there's peer pressure to do otherwise. So kids with character, their buddies want to tease that new girl in class because she's poor and her clothes are not fashionable and she's got holes in her socks and she doesn't have any friends yet because she's new. So your buddies want to walk home and just have fun ragging on this little girl on the way home. And you, with some character, thinking about the principles of proper conduct, you say, you know what, I can't be part of this. And you go. These are your good friends. Oh, Jeff, man, you're not. Sorry. At the highest levels of character, children actually influence others toward principled behavior. So I get a couple of blocks away, and it's just bothering me, and I say, no. And I go back, and I say, not only am I not going to treat her that way, but you shouldn't treat her that way either. That she hasn't done anything to you, leave her alone. Can I carry your bag, your book bag? My name is Jeff, how are you doing? What's the look here? Yeah, you want to keep bothering her, you got to come through me. That's character. So that's our definition of character. Any reactions to it quickly? Here's the character proficiency question in simple terms. Do they know the principles, and do they show it in the streets with no adults around? Okay? Okay, why don't we take a quick bio?